Hello and welcome to another SaaS Showdown. Yes, this is really us. We have not been created by an AI bot. I am Colin McCarthy, and this is.
I'm Rose Layton. Hey,
Can you
Colin.
prove it? Can you prove it, Rose? Can you click on the link to
Uh,
prove that you're not a robot?
I can. Yeah, most of the time.
Excellent, excellent. So we joke about AI generated content. I have seen some popular YouTube people post videos about people copying some of their content and manipulating it to advertise other products. That's the bad, negative side of AI. But in business and in the world of SaaS, there are a great number of positives about AI and large language models and everything else that we want to talk
Right.
to about
Well,
today.
and I recall, Colin, when we last talked about AI, I think, we reviewed that episode in preparation for this one.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I both came across as quite skeptical.
I was yeah, I didn't think it was, I think at the time one of the CEOs said it was as important as the creation of fire or the creation of the
Oh,
wheel.
I don't know about that.
I don't. I think that was some of the claims. I think this is. I've heard the
Yeah.
term fourth industrial revolution, and I think it is more on the lines of Henry Ford creating the production line in the automobile and being able to refine things and improve things than it being
Yeah,
as
right. It was
as
a small
important as
step
fire.
towards a massive change in how we
Yeah,
create things. And
yeah.
it did have a profound impact, but it took a while for that impact to really be felt.
Yes, yeah, and for the last year or since that episode, a lot of this stuff, and it has almost been a year, at least I guess, a good
It
nine
has been
months
about a year.
before
Yeah.
before Gen AI came out last April March time from Google, and I can't remember when Copilot came out. Obviously, ChatGTP came about November December of 22, I think it was. Yeah,
Mhm.
um, everything was beta or alpha or in development. A lot of these products are now sort of GA, generally available, and very much in production in
So yeah, and some of them
organizations.
are free, some of them are limited free, some of them are premium. I think we have a little bit of everything to show today.
Yeah, and talk about.
Yeah. So I mean the idea for this episode was just to revisit, right? Talk about Colin and I absolutely registered as skeptics about a year ago when we released our previous episode. Um I think we were both very much on the fence, but over time we've both started using it. Right? It's kind of hard to get away from, to be honest with you, but it's a bit of a novelty, bit of a curiosity. Um
Yeah, it
yeah.
depends on how you're using it. If you're actively going out and picking those functions within Copilot or ChatGPT or Duet, or if you're just taking advantage of some of the enhancements that have been added to those platforms.
Yeah, that
Um,
use AI in the background.
that use AI and are just presenting better information to us, making things just that little bit easier. The example that I love and have found very useful is in Google Chat Spaces. If you've been away from your computer and there's been a lot of conversation in a space, you will get a very good synopsis, a summary of what was happened. Now, some of that has been around for a period of time, but it is getting better and more detailed, providing more
Yeah.
context. And I found that I don't have to go back and read, the last 20 minutes
My gosh, I
of,
need
of
something like
chat
that
messages.
in some of my apps. Yeah, because
Yeah,
I don't use Google Chat very often, but yeah, if something could just summarize for me, that would be amazing.
yeah, and I'm
You ever
sure
gone
it
on
will
vacation and come back to over 400 messages
in one of your
in a single
we
conversation? It's a single thread.
and obviously
Yeah,
we you can say the platform that you generally use
which is Slack. I'm also
is
talking
Slack,
about Discord though. So we'll get
right?
into that, but part of what I've been doing, right? So my organization doesn't currently allow us to use AI or like put organizational data into AI in
Hmm.
order to do work. So what I've started doing though is I do use it for more generic things for work, but I also use it in like my personal life. I'm a gamer.
Hmm.
I play with an alliance of like almost 200 people, and so like we have all kinds of things that we do together. And one of the things that I did for them, like over the Christmas holiday, was I ran a Christmas giveaway and I made a bunch of
Oh.
graphics using AI for like in theme
Hmm.
of our alliance. But yeah, so I'll show all of that. But um, there's just I think there's just a lot of different things you can do with it, like serious and unserious.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you've focused on the creative image side, and
Mm-hmm.
in
You
my
focused a lot more
personal,
on content, like
yes,
words. Yeah.
yes, in words, but in my personal life, on sort of Instagram and other
Mm-hmm.
groups that I'm a part of, people have been utilizing the AI image generation to create a lot of a lot of Lego box sets of trucks that they would love to have Lego make as models.
Oh, that's fun.
Seemed to
Yeah.
became very, very popular, and everybody who had an off-road vehicle was posting what their vehicle would look like if it was built out of Lego.
Yeah.
And
That's actually that's funny.
and then LinkedIn has been full of images of Lego boxes for like a security ops team, and all of the other sort of office scenarios. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of them were AI generated. So
Yeah.
yeah, there are two different sides to it: business and then a more of a personal pleasure side.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess do we want to start showing off our stuff,
Yeah,
Colin?
yeah, I'm happy to drive to start with.
Yeah.
Let me click some buttons. So here we are on the left, we have Bard, and on the right, we have Duet through my work account. And I have, as an example, loved this for being presented with a big white page and having to draft a document for a guide. So in this case, I've used the example of sending a user emails or emailing a user about their unmanaged Google account and how we're going to transfer it into the domain. Very simple, but doing this gives me a start, and I can
Yeah,
add
you
to
can
it.
sort of build that out into
Yeah,
a more
yeah, and I do
specific
get the
email.
options to refine it, and let me just run it again because it looks like it's timed out. Just give me the option to refine it, expand on it, change some of the language. And in fact, this time it's actually given me a bit more information, um,
Oh, nice.
which is interesting because it didn't. And obviously, you can go through, and it's almost like spin the wheel and get another throw,
Yeah, no,
and
I'm
and
very
see
familiar with that. It's the same with image generation.
and see what you're going to get. But what I found interesting is I asked the same question in Bard, which is obviously the, I guess the free Google account, the Gmail account option that we have for large language model AI within the Google account
Right.
world,
Yeah, it's
and Duet
Google's
is a paid for service. I
public
asked it the
chatbot.
same question, and it said it wasn't able to help me, and it didn't have any the necessary information. The one thing that you and I did notice that it has a disclaimer here down at the bottom saying the information could be inaccurate and we should check it.
Yes.
But
Well, and
then
there's a similar disclaimer on ChatGPT now
yeah,
if you
yeah.
open it
So
up.
in this tab down here, ChatGPT has the same sort of disclaimer saying it can make mistakes. But I asked ChatGPT the same question, and it gave me a more detailed answer for
Mhm.
the first time. Even had a nice sort of
Placeholders
options
for
for what you can
signatures.
put
Yeah.
placeholders for a signature, and it broke it down into the different actions that you would do. And this is very similar to a template that I actually created manually and sent out to people about what we were going to do with account migration. You had the option to back up your data and transferring it to a personal account. So
Mhm.
I found this interesting, and this is one of the sort of the use cases that I've been using is if you do have a blank document and this, and you're creating a guide or you need a start, this gives you the ability
Yeah. Generate a
to get
starting point.
going. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I had something similar where I'm working on a sort of a massive workflow slash process document. But at the beginning, I needed some sort of very foundational things. So I asked it to write me a few sentences about why a software inventory is important to a business. So basically,
Mm.
I wanted to like have an intro that sort of described a software inventory, why we should have one, and what the benefits were. And so that's what I was using this as a foundation for. Because I think,
Hmm.
especially like with enough years in the business, like I'm like, well, of course it's important. Like in my mind, like I don't have an explanation for it. It just is. Right. So this was one of those things that I come to ChatGPT for. And so it did give me two different options when I did it. So I can toggle between those here. But um yeah, and each one of these, I think the main difference between them is sort of the structure of the paragraph.
Hmm.
Um, so this one is very much like first, second, then, and then a summary at the bottom, and then this one is more succinct.
Right. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, and I basically, I copied and pasted these right into the document, started editing them. I think I only made changes to three of the sentences, but
Hmm.
yeah, it worked well. Worked well. I can show another one. So to switch gears just a little bit. So like Colin said, I have been using it for a little bit more like sort of creative pursuits, like image generation. So like I said, I did like a 12 days of Christmas giveaway with my like group of
Wow.
people. And so for each day I created a graphic and the theme like were dragon themed. So I was like
Hmm.
Christmas dragons, right? So each one of these dragons is AI generated. And I just sort of like strung them together. This is made in Canva. So
Right.
this used both the AI tools in Canva as well as a couple other ones when I was looking for a like specific kind of look. But the Canva generation is pretty cool. It's just like a very basic prompt, and then they have a set of different styles that you can choose from. So for example, like this little guy here is in a different style than most of the rest of them, and then this one here is also in a different style. But
And
yeah,
is that a subscription you pay for?
no, they give you free credits.
Right. I was going to ask about credits because I have done some
And a
image
lot of them. I had a lot
manipulation.
of credits.
That's interesting because I was using Pixlr.
Mm-hmm.
Was it
Yeah, I'll get
PI?
into that in a bit because I do have some. I have paid ones now too.
Yeah, Pixlr. I've
Mm-hmm.
always used them as my online photo editor for free for a number of years. But they had an AI image generator, and I thought, oh, let's play around what I could do.
Right.
And it was based on credits, and I think I've used all of my credits, or have very few left. And I
Yeah,
only did like one little edit, and it's like there goes your 15 credits. You've only got 20, so I don't know what I can do with the last five.
I know. Yeah, so I can show just like a slightly different version of one. So just this is to get into sort of the downfalls and like mistakes that AI can make. So this is a logo
Uh,
I was working on.
Wow. I just want to say before I forget, I've just signed into Pixlr,
Hmm.
and dragons and cats must be what everybody's using these tools for,
Yes,
because
basically.
it's showing me everybody else's like examples, and it's all dragons and cats.
I think a lot of people are using them for like personal avatars and stuff. Like when we start, so my alliance is looking for a new logo, and we like just changed our name and stuff like that. So we were kind of entertaining a bunch of options, and this is an example of one where I was looking for the name would have been maximum damage. right? Because our initials are MD. So you can see here, number one, the top is cut off. That's
Mm.
not a mistake. That's actually how it came out. Like it's not just like a display issue. And then you can
Right.
see that like the words they don't make any sense, right? So although the image is pretty good and it's pretty clear, there doesn't appear to be any like major issues. The words is the part that I'm seeing a lot of struggle with. So if you need to
Yes.
include words, so this is one of the reasons that I started using paid tools, because now you can use paid tools if you're not like a Photoshop expert, which I am not.
Hmm.
You can use the paid tools to remove or replace elements of the image. So like,
Right.
like if I decided like, okay, he's carrying two swords here, like I only want him to carry one sword. That's an excessive number of swords. I have tools now where I could just like sort of like paint over the sword and I could say just remove the sword, right? Or I could say like, if I wanted to change the vibe, I could say, replace it with a harp,
Right.
you know so I think that's one of the things about paid tools. You can't really do that with free tools. I think you can sometimes, like they'll give you a trial of it, but if you need to do it kind of repeatedly, you won't be able to do anything like that.
Right. Does it give you the option of like downloading it or editing it then in a popular format, Photoshop or other
Yeah,
editable image file?
yeah.
So you would it export it as all the separate layers? Or,
The free version probably not, but the paid
no.
version,
Right.
yeah, I could get it in a version that had all the layers. So
Yeah. Yeah.
although I will say, like, they're pretty robust on their own. Some of the like, I do this mostly on mobile because I don't like to use my computer when I'm not working. But like, so for example, Pixar is one that I use on iPad
Hmm.
that does. I mean, it does everything now with AI. Like, you can do all kinds of like image adjustments and add different elements, and then you can use AI to add different versions of those different elements. And yeah, there's just like a lot you can do with it. So it's interesting because I don't know if that's a job out there that somebody has, right? Which is just like photoshopping minor edits. But
Well,
like
yes. I
that,
think
there's no need for somebody to do that anymore. Like for real.
obviously being a creative artist, being fluent in Photoshop, Illustrator, all of those things is very, very specialized.
Yeah.
Having to create something like
It's been
this.
interesting because I actually feel like this has made it more accessible for me. I don't consider myself a creative person. Um, I feel like I have an image in my mind a lot of
Hmm.
times, but I can't translate that in real life. Um, because I just don't have the skills, right? And so like I could learn, but like it takes a long time to do that and it takes a long time to kind of like build up. But like
Right.
now, so I can show you something else in ChatGPT that I did, which is this was entirely for fun, right? So we were making a joke about the Eminem song "Lose Yourself," right? And
Right.
the reference to mom's spaghetti. And so I was like, well, what if I asked ChatGPT to basically like create me a song that was about mom's spaghetti, and then I used a different AI tool to make that song in a voice, and then I used a different AI tool to turn that voice into Eminem's voice.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Yeah,
my
like you could
God.
do a whole bunch of stuff, and then you could use AI tools to generate a video to go along with it, even. So, I will say one of the things to be aware of that you're kind of like seeing on the screen right now is that if you're using common or like current pop culture references in specific, or current copyright references rather, ChatGPT will flag it. So you can see on the screen, like I had multiple attempts here flagged. I actually had one whole search that was like completely blocked, like one whole like prompt that was completely blocked, and I had to appeal that because I couldn't see any reason why it was blocked. It's very interesting because their content policy is not very specific, but then they block this kind of stuff. So for what it's worth, but I
Right.
did eventually get a full song out of this. And so I may use this in the future to like refine the song and then like turn it into a full blown video. It was just going to be for myself, to be fair. Like I'm not going to put it on YouTube and monetize it or anything, um, but it is a good example of like, you know, how you can get something in a very specific style. And I mean the
Right.
wordplay in here is actually quite good.
Yeah, and
But
it's interesting how it you do need to be educated with the prompts
mm-hmm.
and what to actually give it, because yes, anybody can do anything with it, but you can't. You have to ask it. You have to ask the tool, regardless of the tool. You have to ask it specific, relatively or quite specific
Mm-hmm.
things in a specific tone,
Yeah.
and
Well, and
then
in my case
refine.
too, like I was bumping up against some kind of like rule that I didn't feel like was a problem, right? Like I'm not violating the content policy. I'm just trying to like do something fun for myself, but they've implemented this sort of block to prevent people from abusing it. And so I had to get a little bit creative with the prompt to get it to give me something that I could work with.
Right, right. And I think that's where some of the problems will come in with some of these tools. I have heard other journalists who have done investigations into these tools talk about how, with the correct wording, you can get ChatGTP to bypass a paid wall and give you, the first paragraph of a article on, Business Insider or the New York Times or another service that's behind a paywall. But you've got to be very specific in some of the wording that you use
Mm-hmm.
and repetitive in the
Yeah,
prompts.
I think multiple times I've kind of had to like bust out my thesaurus to see what I can get if I just change like one adjective, right? I think with image
Right.
creation, like that's a huge deal, is like the sort of imagery that you kind of create in your prompt. With word generation, I feel like describing the task is more
Mm-hmm.
important, right? So, like, for example, in your email that you
Mm-hmm.
wrote, um, some of the emails that I would imagine you got are pretty basic. Like, they need to be expanded on.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
you can get better outputs if you expand a little bit on what you want them to do, or what the purpose of the email is, or what the tone of the email is. Like, there's all kinds of little things you can add in there that will give you like a more appropriate response.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, you
Or
do
you
get.
can generate cats on laptops, you know.
There just seem to be a lot of a lot of that playing around, and obviously you've played around. I've done some playing around as well. We were, and I'll share this because I've just been reminded as looking in my ChatGTP history. We were playing around at work a number of months ago when the AI tools came out, and somebody joked about singing Baby Shark, and I said, no, we should have a policy against that. So I quickly went into ChatGTP and created a policy and posted it in our chat forum about banning them from singing
That's
Baby Shark.
hilarious.
And then they went to their AI program and then wrote a simulated HR complaint against against the new policy that was infringing their rights to be able to sing Baby Shark in the office, and about how it improved morale. And it just went. It must have been a slow afternoon, but we were misusing the tool to go backwards and
But no,
forwards.
but I mean, honestly, to be fair, like those are great examples of things you could actually do, right? Like you can create yourself a starting point for a new policy, a company policy, and you can also use ChatGPT to create an HR complaint, right? Like you don't need to write that stuff yourself. Like I know there are moments in corporate life where like you have to write emails that are not comfortable, right? Or they take a
Right.
while because you're trying to like process through how to say what you want to say. And like these things can do that for you. right? And then you're just editing. So it takes a
Yeah.
lot of I think the struggle out of it if you have a hard time putting that stuff down to paper or
Yes.
virtual
Yeah. And for
paper.
those scenarios, that is great because it gives you a good template.
Mm-hmm.
I'm for some of these tools, if they're used within, writing, I've been asked to write a couple of LinkedIn referrals for people, and or recommendations, and I've wanted to do them, and I've struggled with knowing how to write it myself, and then I've tried to use ChatGPT or Bard or
Mm-hmm.
Duet to write those recommendations, and the recommendations that have come back aren't correct, aren't right, and I
No,
haven't been able to get
ChatGPT
to
can make
them.
mistakes.
Yes, yes. So it's not going to work for everything.
Yeah, I find that it's not personalized enough, right?
Yes,
So
yeah, and I
like,
think that's going to be where the improvements and the
yeah.
enhancements come with
And I think we talked
having more
about this in a
context.
previous episode, maybe if Jesse didn't cut it out. But like, I do think that one of the biggest opportunities, for example, like in my work life, one of the things that I tend to do a lot is I tend to create a lot of power or slide decks.
Hmm.
And I tend to do those like they're not all that dissimilar from the previous slide deck I've created, right? So when we can get to the point where like something can sort of read my body of work and then create something that is in line with my body of work, I think then we'll be like off like a rocket. I mean, it'll be incredible. But until then, it's sort of like, okay, I can create things that don't really have a precedent. Otherwise, I'm going to be adding precedent back into it, right? So like I could create a slide deck that's like, you know, create me a deck that's a metrics report out for a project, right? But there's going to be so much that I need to change based on the
Hmm.
organization I'm at, the project I'm doing, the sort of nuances to how we deal with those things at our organization that it's almost not worth the time. Like it's cool as a novelty, but yeah, I would almost rather use it for very specific tasks right now, which is still like, like write me an email that doesn't really have any other precedent or summarize something for me that there's a lot of content.
Yes, yeah.
Or,
The
generate an
summaries,
image for me that I can use in something.
yeah, yeah. The summaries have been brilliant within Google Workspace using Google Meet. It can do the meeting transcriptions without
Right.
having to do the recording. I find that incredibly useful.
Yeah.
Um,
It's much
and
faster than it used to be. Like
yes,
I
yeah.
used to wait a long time for Zoom recording transcriptions. And then they would only be like 60% accurate.
Yeah, I've seen them get better even in the last couple of months.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah. Now that we
Less
have
mistakes.
the GPT-4 and stuff, like I've seen the speed of those really, really go up. Like
Yeah.
I'm talking like, 3 years ago. It used to be like an hour long Zoom meeting would need
Hmm.
30 minutes to transcribe
Yeah. The
after the meeting.
talking about transcriptions as we end today in a Google Meet call, somebody was having terrible problems with their microphone, and it was all garbled and we couldn't hear what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, let's turn on captions. Captions captured everything they said perfectly. So they're speaking to us. They sounded like the school teacher out of Charlie
Yeah, like
Brown.
you couldn't understand it, but with
Couldn't understand
captions, it was
them. The
fine.
captions, because it must have been doing it locally at their end or something, and was just transcribing them perfectly.
That's
So
amazing.
I,
Actually, that's very useful, right? Because, like, especially when you think about global organizations, when you think about internet issues, like, I mean, I told you right before Christmas, like, my internet went out and it was out for 10 days. Like, but anyway, like, those things happen. And, you're not always going to have a perfect connection with somebody on a call. And, like,
you
it used to be that you would have to kind of wait until afterwards or just switch to async. Like, you would not be
yeah,
able to continue the meeting. And like now with tools like this, like, yeah, like
Yep. Yep.
It's just a tiny little blip.
Should we end with some cats? Some more cats?
Yeah.
Because there's one walking around down here. Um, so this is Google Slides. This is Duet in Google Slides. You can create images with Duet. So my prompt was a cat working on a laptop in a busy office building. And these are the ones that we have. We have these options. I think we did find that
Oh, yeah. There's a
we
weird
we
one.
talked about some glitches. This cat has an eye problem, which is sad, but it seems to be doing okay. And it's obviously bought a knocked off imitation laptop there. But I do find these very interesting, and I obviously all of these revolve around cats. I think a lot of the internet is powered by cats, and I think a lot of the
A
modeling
lot
has
of the,
used
yeah, I was going to
cats.
say a lot of the responses come back really great when you use cats. So,
So I'm going to do a new one, a cat presenting a flowchart in a meeting, and we'll see what it comes up with. And we'll create a new slide. Oh, and look, there we go. There's a cat presenting a flowchart. This is my favorite one. I think I'm actually gonna keep that one for myself.
wow, look at
Although
that flowchart too. That's
he does
beautiful.
look a little bit angry. There's that one. It's always the same cat though, so they've only got one actor, one cat
In
actor
duet, they
for
only have
this.
one cat. I think if you told that there
Um,
was a different color cat, like if you specified it was a black cat,
each time.
you
Well,
could
now
get
now
a
we've got
different one.
some. Yeah, we have a different cat there, but I think he's presenting somebody else's material. Um, this one is a very more involved flow chart. Um, that
These are
yeah
cute.
that
I
he's
like them.
presenting. So that's what this can all be used for. So
Yeah, some of
I
it's
thought that was
useful,
a
some of it's completely vapid, but you can impress your
yeah.
colleagues.
I will. I'm going to use that. I'm going to save that one and use it.
Awesome. Well, Colin, it's been great to revisit ChatGPT and the various AI tools with you. I'm glad that we have found a way to accept them into our hearts and into our lives because
Yes.
I
Yeah.
do think that they are making some things easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And they're certainly here to stay. And even if we're not actively using them, we will be benefiting from the advances within the SaaS platforms
absolutely.
that we use.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for staying and listening to us ramble on about ChatGTP, Duet, Bard, Copilot, even, and all the other ones that we forgot. So thank you. Until next time.
See you, Colin.